Thank you, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for this wonderful group of colleagues who've joined us today. 2019 is a watershed year for women in New York State. Not only is it the 100th anniversary of the first two women elected to the New York State Legislature, Mary Lilly and Ida Samus, but it is also for us the biggest number of elected women in the legislature ever, 70. Yeah. And I would argue also probably the most diverse group of women in every way possible from every corner of New York State. Age difference, I think our gap is, or our stretch is probably 55 years or more between our youngest and our oldest women legislators. I'm not going to tell you who they are. And we have a diversity of backgrounds, of ethnicity, of gay, straight. I mean, it's just been really kind of remarkable to see the change that's happened even in the short time since I was first elected. And we also have, I think for the first time in history, 50% of our state elected officials are women. So we're inching towards that 51%, but we do, we've got great things that that ahead of us, but it's really wonderful to have this, this great group of elected women in New York State right now, and as the chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, it's my great honor to introduce our Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul, who is our rock star and our advocate and travels the state like nobody else has ever.
Thank you, Assemblymember Barrett, and yes, indeed, it is Women's History Month. I think we should declare a decade of women's history to celebrate because we have a little lost time to make up for, but we have made tremendous progress, and it is important that we at least mark a certain time in our calendar year to recognize the brave foremothers who came before us, and we have an opportunity to celebrate them. And when you think about the women who made New York State history, it is an extensive list, and I will just go through some names, and you can think about their place in our history and how significant it is. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Eleanor Roosevelt, Frances Perkins, Shirley Chisholm, Gloria Steinem, Geraldine Ferraro, and Hillary Clinton, just to name a few New Yorkers who made incredible history. But I like to say that in New York State, we don't like to just make history. We want to make progress. And that's why I'm so proud to stand with so many individuals who now represent 33% of our state legislature is now women. And that, give yourselves a round of applause. I've only been on this job since 2015 and was 28% there. So just in the last election, as Dee Dee Barrett said, we now have 70 members of our state legislature who are women. So all of you are in a position to have tremendous influence on policies that affect women and children and families all across the state of New York, and I could not be prouder to call you my colleagues. But as we think about the names I just mentioned, you have to think about the fact that we also have a moral responsibility to pick up the torch that's been handed to us from these brave, audacious individuals who challenged the status quo as far back as 1848 in our home state, in a place called Seneca Falls, where 300 individuals gathered, mostly women and a few brave male souls as well who joined them, to challenge the status quo of their time and declare that there should be a declaration of sentiments giving full equality to women and including the right to vote. Well, progress takes time, and it was not until 1917 here in the state of New York that women earned that right to vote after years of struggle and arrests and protests and being ostracized by their communities, but they never gave up, and that is the story that we must continue. And it was only a few years later when the rest of the nation caught up with New York State, and next year we'll be celebrating the centennial of women having the right to vote in federal elections all across America. And that will be one celebration. But just a few years later, 1923, Alice Paul, if you look up her story, she also declared that being able to vote alone is not true equality. And I agree with her. She said that we need to have an Equal Rights Amendment as part of our Constitution to enshrine the rights of women so no one can be discriminated against on account of sex. She did that in 1923 to celebrate the 75th anniversary of that women's gathering in Seneca Falls in 1848. So she also knew the significance of that event and how she had a responsibility to move the plight of women in the state forward. That is what all of us gathered here today also feel a responsibility to do. And I'm proud to be part of Governor Cuomo's administration and to promote the women's justice agenda, which is going to, in hyper speed, start making up for a lot of lost time when we were not able to get through initiatives that we believe are for the betterment of women in the state of New York. The Reproductive Health Act, the Contraception Care Act, making sure that victims of domestic violence have their just due, protect guns out of the hands of domestic abusers. We've done so much already, and we have so much more to do, protecting rights of individuals to have their family planning, in vitro fertilization, access to quality child care. The most expansive paid family leave program in America today is right here in the state of New York. But our business is not finished yet. We need to ensure full equality in the workplace, in educational institutions, where women should be free from sexual harassment once and for all. And we all stand together in support of women's rights to celebrate our history. But again, that history empowers us. In fact, it mandates us to take up the mantle now and to move forward with an aggressive, proactive agenda to, in our time on this earth, our time to have the privilege of elective office, to truly make a difference in the lives of women. And that is why I'm so proud to celebrate this momentous occasion with the incredible individuals here with us today. And at this point, I'd like to call up Kathy Sheehan, who will be delivering some remarks. Again, another trailblazer. The women elected officials are incredible. When you think about the responsibility of a mayor, the chief executive officer, the very first in the county of Albany, the first in the city of Albany, there are still far too many firsts, in my opinion. I'd like to get to the day where it becomes normal to have women county executives and mayors and supervisors and CEOs and board of directors and heads of not-for-profits and health organizations. So we will celebrate, and presidents while we're at it, hopefully soon. So again, we honor the progress that's been made, but we also have a moral responsibility to keep forging ahead. And we stand together, united as one voice, speaking for the women all across the state of New York to say, we're not finished yet. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure of mine to introduce our great mayor, Kathy Sheehan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we are so fortunate in the state of New York to have our lieutenant governor who gets these issues, who has been forged her own way and made her own history. So I just want to acknowledge Kathy Hochul again. Thank you so much for all that you do for our state and for other women. And many of the women who are standing here, all of the women who are standing here today, recognize and acknowledge the importance of the shoulders that we stand on and the importance of us lifting back and reaching down and pulling other women along. I never appreciated when I was in the corporate world and there was the big movement afoot to get 20% of board seats filled by women. I thought that was ridiculous. Why was it 20%? It needed to be 51%, 60%. We have boards that are 95% male. Why not boards with 95% women? So we're making progress. When you look at where New York State was and where it is now, it truly is incredible. But we have to keep it going because 20%, 30%, 40% isn't enough. We need to ensure that we have voices at the table, voices like the assembly members who are joining me here, including Dee Dee, who we heard from, and Rebecca Seawright, Joanne Simon, Jamie Romeo, and Donna Lupardo, all of them. You're making history. Thank you. And Linda Rosenthal, sorry if there were any latecomers. From the Senate, we have our leader, who's not here, but making history as the first woman leader. But we're also joined by Rachel May and Anna Kaplan, making history. You know, Albany is a very old city. We were settled in 1624, we were chartered in 1686, and there are some women in this city who didn't make history. And when I say they didn't make history, there were people, many of them among the most privileged in our city, and there was a wonderful display about it at our Albany Institute of History and Art, who did not believe that women should be given the right to vote and who fought against the suffrage movement. So I'm fortunate that they didn't make history. The people that Kathy Hochul talked about are the ones that made history, and that those standing behind me are going to continue to make history. So thank you very much.
This proclamation to ourselves. I also want to acknowledge the members of the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission who are here as well. They have been working tirelessly all across the state for the last couple of years and will continue into 2020 to celebrate that significant part of our history, but also to make sure that everyone knows that it all began here in the state of New York. So, ladies, if you want to gather with me, we'll get away from the podium. Back to the shot. We also acknowledge the presence of Assembly Rayner, who's also joining us as well. And Judy Griffin.